Hello everyone. I'm so glad you're here because today we are diving into something that is making a lot of headlines lately. The Federal Trade Commission or the FTC and their crackdown on what we call AI washing. Think of me as your guide through this legal jungle. I've spent over 2 decades navigating these waters, and I promise, by the time we are done, you'll see these regulations not as scary hurdles but as common sense rules of the road. When we talk about the FTC, the primary tool in its belt is Section 5 of the FTC Act. Now, if you look at the formal definition, Section 5 prohibits unfair or deceptive acts or practices in or affecting commerce. In simple terms, it's the government's way of saying, hey, you can't lie to people to get their money. It's the ultimate truth in advertising law. Imagine you're at a local fair and a guy is selling a tonic that promises to regrow hair overnight, but it's actually just salt water. That is a Section 5 violation. In our world, the FTC is looking at AI the exact same way they look at that hair tonic. They don't care how fancy the tech is. They care if you are being honest about what it actually does. So now that we know the FTC has the power to step in when things get dishonest, you might be wondering what specific type of dishonesty is trending right now. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is defining the phenomenon known as AI washing. The term AI washing doesn't have a boring dictionary entry yet, but in the eyes of the law, it refers to the practice of companies making exaggerated or false claims about the AI capabilities of their products to capitalize on the current hype. To put it simply, it's like putting a gourmet sticker on a frozen pizza that you just heated up in the microwave. I've seen this happen at the office a dozen times lately. A startup claims their software uses advanced neural networks to predict market shifts. But when you look under the hood, it's actually just a very basic Excel spreadsheet with a few if-then formulas. The FTC is onto this. They know that AI is the shiny new buzzword that makes stock prices go up, and they are here to make sure you aren't just using it as a marketing coat of paint. Now, understanding that AI washing is essentially a fake it till you make it strategy gone wrong is one thing. But we need to look at the specific trap most companies fall into, which leads us to the danger of over-promising on functionality. The first big red flag for the FTC is when a company claims their product is AI powered when the AI doesn't actually exist or doesn't contribute to the core function. The technical standard here is whether the representation of the technology's capability is materially misleading. In our everyday language, we just ask, are you selling a dream or a real tool? Think about a vacuum cleaner company that claims its new model uses AI-driven spatial awareness to clean your floors. If it turns out the vacuum is just bumping into walls randomly as they did in 2005, that's a problem. You sold the customer on a sophisticated brain that isn't actually in the machine. Stay with me here, because this is where a lot of well-meaning marketing teams get into trouble by using AI as a synonym for automatic. Now, even if you do have an AI, you can still get in trouble if you claim it's better than it really is. Which brings us to the tricky world of comparative claims. A lot of companies love to say their AI is more accurate than a human or the most powerful model on the market. In the regulatory world, these are called comparative or superlative claims, and the FTC requires you to have competent and reliable scientific evidence to back them up before you say them. Simply put, if you say your AI-driven medical app is better than a doctor at spotting a cold, you better have the lab results and the data to prove it. You can't just feel like it's true, you have to know it's true. I remember a case where a company claimed their AI could predict if someone would be a good employee just by looking at a video of their face. They had no data to prove it worked, they just thought the tech sounded cool. That is a fast track to a massive fine. So, we've learned you can't lie about having AI, and you can't lie about it being the best. But there's a third trap, the black box problem, which leads us to our next scene on transparency. The FTC doesn't just care about the cool stuff your AI does. They also care about you being honest about the not so cool stuff, like the risks or limitations. Legally, failing to disclose a material limitation is considered deceptive. In simple words, if your AI chatbot is prone to hallucinating or making things up, you can't market it as a flawless source of truth. It's like selling a car but forgetting to mention that the brakes only work 90% of the time. You have to be upfront. If your AI has a bias or if it's trained on data that might be out of date, you need to be clear about that. You've probably seen those little disclaimers at the bottom of AI sites lately. That's not just for fun, that's companies trying to avoid an FTC headache. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I'll just be careful with my words. But the FTC looks at more than just your ads. And that leads us to our final stop, which is how they look at the entire user experience. The final thing you need to understand is that the FTC looks at the quote-unquote net impression. This is the legal idea that it's not just about one specific sentence in your contract. It's about the overall vibe your marketing gives off. If your website is covered in pictures of futuristic brains and robots, and you use words like autonomous and intelligent everywhere, but your fine print says this is just a basic calculator, the FTC is still going to come after you. They look at what a quote reasonable consumer would believe after looking at your site. It's like a restaurant having a picture of a giant juicy steak on the window, but when you sit down, they tell you they only serve hot dogs. The quote net impression was steak, and that's deceptive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the power of Section 5 to the nuances of AI washing and the importance of being honest about what's under the hood.